When I think about best, I think about things I learned from my father. Dad's third favorite thing to say was, "You should always do your best, and people cannot expect more than that from you." Dad's second favorite thing to say was, "Don't be like Arnold Berman." Arnold was an older boy who lived on our block, and the most significant thing about him, as far as I was concerned, was that he had once had a letter published in Mad Magazine. As a good kid, I followed Dad's admonitions, and I never wrote any letters to the editor. Dad's very favorite thing to say was, "When I was your age, I was 3 years older." I tried hard not to understand that. But Dad's best lessons didn't come from his words, they came from his actions. He was thoroughly committed to everything he did, whether it was his work planning low-income housing projects, his volunteer activities at our synagogue, or most of all, his jokes. When I was in college, he came up with the best joke. He created the Nadel Foundation Scholarship and Loan Program, for which the sole criterion was being a child of Mr. Nadel. But since he never did anything by half measures, he had stationery printed with his name as president and treasurer, and my mother's as vice president and secretary, and the motto, "Those who learn knowledge know something." He used that stationery not only for sending tuition checks, but for sending my brother and me just ordinary checks. So once I got a letter that said, "The Nadel Foundation, Island Park's foremost educational charity, is pleased to remit the sum of $50 as your distribution from the vice president's investment in a fly-by-night gold mining company. Because this money was acquired frivolously, you are instructed to spend it in an equally frivolous manner. The foundation has full confidence in your ability to follow these directions." Now, I'm my father's daughter. My opportunity to demonstrate my commitment actually came a few years earlier than that, when I was in high school. Island Park doesn't have its own high school, so we were bused half an hour away to West Hempstead, a much larger town, where there would be 350 students in my class who I had not met before. On the first day of 9th grade, Mrs. Malone, our English teacher, handed out a getting to know you questionnaire. It did not occur to me to question what she was going to use this for, so it did not occur to me to suppress my natural smartass tendencies. On the line that said hobbies, I wrote down tennis, knitting, and witchcraft. The next day, Mrs. Malone announced that each student would have to give a 5 to 7 minute talk to the class about a subject she would select from our questionnaires. I was in the first group, and I had a week to prepare. As she announced, "Sue will talk about gymnastics, Rich will talk about camping, and Miriam will talk about witchcraft." There it was, new school, new people. I was doomed, I was condemned to be the weird kid. Well, witchcraft had not been an entirely random choice. In junior high, I had edited the school newspaper, and I once wrote an article in which I advocated drawing magic symbols on one's homework and exam papers as a path to good grades, although I was forced by the school advisor to add in a line about there being a technique known as studying that might be an appropriate alternative. So the talk itself wasn't a big deal. I did a little bit of research, and I talked about these magic symbols and potions and, just the general things. But in those days, long before Harry Potter or even Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this gave me a bit of a reputation. Well, I'm my father's daughter. I went with it. I dressed all in black. I carried around the complete book of magic with me everywhere I went, told people's fortunes using tarot cards, and Yes, I drew those magic symbols in the corner of every one of my papers. In fact, once I forgot to write my name on a social studies exam. The teacher somehow or other just magically knew that it was my paper. As a result, by the time that I graduated, I was voted most likely to move to California. Now, it took a few years, but the country is tilted, and everything loose does eventually fall into California. And so I did end up there. And I quickly learned that everything I had learned from my father was wrong. See, everybody I knew in California was seeking something great. The only thing I was ever seemed to be seeking was my car in a parking lot. And, you know, Arnold Berman had moved to California too, and he was having a successful career and seemed very happy. I had a number of bosses who all seemed to expect me to do more than what I thought was my best that I was already doing. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll understand this, but I think first I'm going to have to be 3 years older. Thank you.